Are you coming to the tree where they strung up a man? They say murder three. Strange things that happen here. How stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree?
Welcome to Strange Things, broadcasting from the Arkanasa Radio Studios in Laredo, Texas. And welcome to the show. I'm your host, Chris James. When I first started doing a podcast, I had no idea it was going to last this long. I don't even know which episode this is, but it's been a few years now. Tonight, I'm going to be going over some scary Halloween stories once again. It's that time of year. Hocus Pocus is on just about every night. They had Monster House on a couple of times. I wonder why they don't show Paranorman each year. I kind of like that one. Interesting show. There are a lot of neat movies out there, but the TV channels show the same few every year. Almost as if it's in their contract or something. I own very few movies. Usually things most folks never watch. Movies like Dead Alive or Blood-Sucking Pharaohs in Pittsburgh. How about the Manchu Eagle Murder Mystery Caper? And Night of the Witches. You know, classics. Movies that they just don't ever show on TV. As far as the others go, Paranorman, movies like that, I just never get around to buying them. Anyway, I'm not doing a show on movies. I did that one a while ago. Tonight, I'll be telling some scary stories that I've managed to track down. As far as I know, all of them are true. I don't do that creepypasta thing. I've had people write in and ask on occasion if the stories I'm telling are true or whether just something I made up, and as far as I know, they're all true. I can't drive around the countryside looking these things up, so I have to do it from home or my library. But here we go with some Halloween stories. When I was growing up, there were cars that you really wanted. The Roadrunner or the GTO. Muscle cars that were mostly engine, and they had a few creature comforts, like maybe an AM radio. If you were really slick, you had an 8-track tape player. Yes, I had both. You felt safe in your vehicle, surrounded by a few tons of steel, with an engine that could move you down the road at incredible speeds. Nowadays, you've got AM, FM, XM, CD, auxiliary radios, things to keep you entertained while you're driving. Back when I was first learning to drive, the idea of hitchhiking was considered normal. People would step out with their thumb in the air and somebody would stop and give them a ride. Been there, done that. One night, I got a lift from a Texas trooper. My truck broke down and I needed a ride 15 miles down the road so I could buy a clutch plate. The trooper gave me a ride. Then he would come by every so often during the night and check to see if I was okay. Laying underneath my pickup on the side of the highway, in fact it was Highway 59, just south of Texarkana. It took me most of the night to change out the clutch plate. By morning, I was pretty well filthy, but I was heading down the road again. I'd like to thank that trooper, but it's been about 40 years. One of the common stories I've seen all over the place is the Phantom Hitchhiker. It's late at night and a person or a couple is driving along a deserted part of the road. As they travel, they spot a young woman, and sometimes it's a man, hitchhiking. On occasion, the person is simply walking along in the dark. Well, the driver stops and offers this mysterious person a lift. Once safely in the vehicle, the hitchhiker tells the driver the address they're heading to. The driver gets to the location, only to discover the hitchhiker is no longer in the vehicle. One of the most famous vanishing hitchhikers is Resurrection Mary from Chicago. January 1979, a Chicago cab driver stopped to pick up a female passenger who was standing at the front gates of the Resurrection Cemetery. She moved over from the gates as if she was about to enter the cab, only to vanish right next to the vehicle. Does it surprise anybody to find out I used to drive a cab? Many years ago. That TV show, Taxi, well, that was pretty accurate, if hilarious. We had one guy that would drive around listening to chanting music on a cassette player that he had sitting on the seat. This was way back before any kind of New Age movement, so he was considered to be pretty much out there. One night, he stopped to pick up a fare at the bus station. I just happened to pull in right behind him. He decided he just had to talk to me, so he got out of his cab and came walking back. Well, he left his cab in gear and it took off down the street. He wound up chasing it down the street several blocks, managing to catch it, and just his luck, it didn't hit anything. The couple waiting for their ride, they were really impressed with his driving capability, so they decided they'd wait for the next cab to come by, and I never did find out what it was he wanted to talk to me about, because once he caught his cab, he got in and drove away. Richard Crow is a local historian and folklorist who lives in Chicago. He had this to say about Resurrection Mary. I think that of all the ghost stories worth believing in, Resurrection Mary is the one with the best documentation. The witnesses that I've found are remarkably level-headed. They are primarily blue-collar, middle-class types who have steady jobs and who have no major claims to psychic encounters in their lives. The first recorded sighting was made by Jerry Pallas in 1939. He met a young girl at a dance hall. She was blonde and wearing a white gown. She didn't say much during the night. Her skin felt cold to the touch. Jerry thought it was just because the room was cold. They danced throughout the night, and then, when it was closing time, he offered her a ride home. She said yes, and they got into his car to head to the south side of town. As Jerry drove, the woman told him to stop at the gates of the cemetery. He pulled over to the curb, thinking that just maybe she wanted to spend a little more time with him. Mary opened the door, got out, and vanished. Jerry was startled. He looked around, trying to see where his date had gotten to. He looked around his car, and then he looked through the gates into the cemetery. The gates were locked, so he figured she must have somehow slipped between the bars. However, she had done it. She had given him the slip. Well, Jerry was taken by this mysterious young girl, and he wanted to talk to her and hopefully take her out again. Driving to the south side of town, Jerry found the address he'd been given, and he knocked at the door. The woman that answered told Jerry the young woman, Mary Bergovi, had been her daughter. She had died in 1934, 5 years previous, in a car crash just weeks before her 21st birthday. She had been buried in her favorite white gown at Resurrection Cemetery. Resurrection Mary has been seen many times at several locations. She usually appears at dance clubs, or sometimes the back seat of a taxi. Many people see her walking along the street outside the cemetery, as if looking for somebody to take her home. In 1980, Claire Rudnicki was driving along Archer Road. As they passed the front of Resurrection Cemetery, she saw a young woman walking along the side of the road. She said, "I really didn't think there was any such thing as ghosts. You hear these stories and these old ghost tales, but it never going to happen to me. Now, I must say, I think I've changed my mind. I was just looking out the window as we were going down the street. On the right-hand side of the road, there was a girl walking. She looked very bright, like she was illuminated. She was just walking very slowly. I remember thinking, oh my God, it's Resurrection Mary. I could feel my stomach starting to turn. I was very frightened. I have to admit, it scared me." Claire's husband, Mark Rudnicki, was also in the car. He said, "We went past it, but turned around and came back. By the time we'd gotten there, she was gone. She'd simply vanished." In October 1989, Janet Kalale and her friends were out driving around town. After about an hour of random travel, they found themselves on Archer Road, coming up on Resurrection Cemetery. Janet said she saw a very pale young woman who suddenly stepped out in front of the car. There was no impact. There was no bump to say that we'd hit something, but I knew I'd run her over. She was all in white, and her hair and the dress were kind of flowing back. It was like a stream backwards away from her. I just saw this profile of a young woman. Well, Janet jumped out of her vehicle and looked to see what had become of the person she thought she'd hit. There was nothing anywhere around that even looked like a young girl in white. The story of Mary began when a young woman in Chicago spent an evening dancing at the O. Henry Ballroom, which later became known as the Willowbrook Ballroom. The dance hall is located on Archer Avenue. One story goes that she got into a fight with her boyfriend and left, intent on walking home. As she walked along the side of the road in the dark, a car came along and hit her. The driver fled the scene, and Mary died on the side of the road. For years now, people have seen Mary all over town. She's described the same way. Long blonde hair, wearing a white dress. She, on occasion, will ask for a ride, and she winds up getting a lift only to vanish as the vehicle passes Resurrection Cemetery. Some folks said they saw her by the gates to the cemetery as if about to leave for the night. Hollywood has kind of trained people as to what a ghost should look like. The ghost my wife and I saw looked just like any person out there. He looked solid and alive. Until he got into an elevator and the doors closed. I pushed the button for the next cab, and the doors opened on an empty elevator. I was almost convinced that I had mistaken, but my wife said she saw the same man get into the elevator. She described him from head to toe exactly as I'd seen him. Resurrection Mary has been described in a few different ways. Usually, she looks perfectly normal. Other times, she looks very much like a ghost from TV. But she always has long blonde hair and a white dress. Today, you'll see a lot of folks driving slowly up and down Archer Avenue around Resurrection Cemetery, all looking for Mary Bergovi or Resurrection Mary. Dr. Eckersall was driving home from a country club in St. Louis when he spotted a young woman walking along the side of the road. She was wearing a full-length white ball gown. This looked a bit odd, walking along the road dressed in such refinery, but seeing as he was coming from the country club, he thought she must have left from the same place. He pulled over and offered her a ride. The young woman got in and then gave him her address. The doctor drove her to the neighborhood, but as he drew close to the house, the young woman vanished from his car. This was startling, and it gave him quite a shock. 1 second, there's a good-looking woman sitting next to him in his car, and the next, no one. He was curious as to what might be going on, and he decided to stop at the address anyway. Knocking at the door, an old man answered. When the doctor described his missing passenger, the old man told him this sounded just like his daughter. She had died years ago, but people kept coming by saying they had given her a ride, and she would always vanish just before arriving home. A newlywed couple, Nathan and Heather, were driving up the Northern California coast to spend their dream honeymoon in a quaint bed and breakfast with a nice seaside view. They had hoped to arrive before dark, but the heavy fog had descended on Highway 1 and their progress was somewhat slowed. They were already running an hour behind as they were heading up the coast. If you've ever driven that stretch of highway, you know how torturous it can be, with its narrow lanes and switchback curves. As they were rounding one of these curves, they passed a solitary hitchhiker. A young woman in a wispy white dress, standing on the shoulder with her thumb up. The couple weren't planning on stopping, since they were running late, but their humanity took over, and they turned around to offer a ride. As they were approaching the hitchhiker from the other direction, they could see her dress was all messed up. It was torn and stained. It looked more like a Halloween costume than something to wear for a night out on the town. Her skin was very pale, but then some people do need to get outside now and then. The couple stopped next to the hitchhiker and offered her a ride. The young woman got in the back seat and gave her address. She described how to get there and what to look for. The couple drove the young woman to where she had requested. There was an old gas station on the corner, just like she had said. Once near the address, the driver asked if this was the right place. He asked again. His wife turned and looked into the back seat to see if maybe their passenger had fallen asleep. But there was no one there. "She's gone," Heather said. "What do you mean?" her husband asked. "She's not in the back seat." They both looked in the back seat, but there was no sign of their passenger. As they sat there at the curb looking for the hitchhiker and trying to decide what had happened, the porch light came on at the house. An elderly couple stepped out onto the porch. "Can we help you?" the man asked. He looked as if he already knew what they were going to say. "I don't know," Nathan began. "We were driving. We picked up this hitchhiker, a young girl." "And she gave you this address," the man said, "and asked you to bring her home?" "Yes," said Heather. "And then she was gone." To this, Heather nodded. The old man just looked at them and said, "Don't worry, you're not crazy. And you're not the first. She was our daughter. Her name was Diane. She passed away 7 years ago, killed by a hit-and-run driver on the highway. They never caught the man. I guess her spirit won't rest until they do." Nathan and Heather were speechless. After exchanging very uncomfortable goodbyes, the newlyweds departed. Almost the same story as Resurrection Mary, but it's in California instead of Chicago. On a rainy night in Jamestown, North Carolina, US 70A curves by an old overgrown underpass. Drivers will see a young woman in a white evening gown standing by the side of the road. She looks to be desperately trying to flag down a passing car. Anyone willing to stop and help out are in for a bit of a surprise. The young girl will get in and tell the driver her name is Lydia, and she asks for a ride to her home. She was walking home from the school dance when it began to rain, and now she's soaked. She tells the driver her address, then sits back to relax and warm up and hopefully get home on time. Once she has told her address, she quiets down and doesn't say anything else. When the driver gets to the address, Lydia just sits in the passenger seat, not moving. If the driver gets out to help her exit the vehicle, she'll be gone before the door can be opened. Just a wet seat will be all that remains of her visit. Should the driver be curious enough to ask, the homeowner will say that Lydia was his daughter who died while walking home from the school dance. She was hit by a hit-and-run driver right next to the overpass where she was picked up. She died in 1923, but her ghost has been seen for years after. It is so common that the overpass is known as Lydia's Bridge. The similarities between these stories is striking. Young woman in white gets a ride home only to vanish. Father or mother says she had died years previous. Could this be several ghosts seen in different parts of the country? At least the ghosts were nice enough to wait for an invitation before getting into these folks' cars. In the mid-1980s, a woman named Roxy was driving along Highway 36 near Edmonton, Alberta in Canada, when she was startled to see someone was now sitting in the passenger seat of her car. She said, "I realized he wasn't flesh and blood, but needless to say, I was scared. He appeared in shades of black, gray, and white, as if a black and white movie was being projected into my car." Roxy went on to describe the man. She said his clothing looked to be from the previous decade, and she was able to describe him clearly. He had on a black turtleneck sweater, black pants, and leather boots. His hair was blonde, and it hung down to his chin. He turned to look at her and smiled. He held up one hand and waved before vanishing. And not really a hitchhiker, more like an uninvited visitor. Highway 12 through Baraboo in Sauk County is noted for a hitchhiking ghost. For years, drivers have reported seeing a man walking along the side of the highway. He wears a green army jacket from the 60s. OD green field jacket. I have one just like it here at my house. The man on the side of the road also has on blue jeans. In most reports, the man is said to have dark beard and long black or dark hair. Drivers will pass him, not paying too much attention. He doesn't look all that friendly and not the kind of person you'd want to pick up. Not like a young girl in a white dress or anything. Well, after driving down the road for about a mile or two, they'll see him again. It looks like the same man walking along the road. How he got ahead of them, that's the mystery. Just to add to it, if the driver continues driving, they may see him again. No one has come up with a name or a story to go with the Phantom Hitchhiker. Maybe he was some homeless man that was killed by a vehicle near where he is seen today. Should a driver decide to pull over to offer him a ride, the man in the army jacket will be gone before the car stops. Now you could think he ran off the side of the road to hide if you didn't know the stories going around. This particular section of the highway has undergone some changes and upgrades over the years. Even when the road is in a different location, the man in the army jacket is seen along the side of the new road. The Baraboo Tours Facebook page reported that a sighting was turned in November 7th, 2011 by a truck driver. The driver spotted the man at about 9:45 near Ski High Road. He was spotted again by the S-curve near Skillet Creek. Another witness shared his story in which he gave an excellent physical description of the man and pointed out that he saw the man for the first time near the airport on the east side of the road and then again near the S-curve between the cemetery and the trailer park. Although many have tried to find the Phantom Hitchhiker, no one has yet been able to explain who he is or why he is haunting this particular stretch of the road. The Phantom Hitchhiker has been seen during the daytime as well as at night. He's been seen on clear days and on foggy mornings, in the rain and in the snow. Even the police have seen the hitchhiker. While responding to calls, officers will see a man dressed in the clothing as described. And with that, I am going to take a very brief pause, play a couple of commercials, and drink some coffee. So don't go away. We'll be right back after this. You're listening to Arkanasa Radio. Did you hear a bump in the night and you think it just might be a ghost? Contact the Laredo Paranormal Research Society at laredoparanormal@hotmail.com. That's the LPRS for all your otherworldly needs. If you need to squint and hold things out at arm's length to see them, maybe you should get your eyes checked. Del Norte Optical, 107 Calle del Norte, is right across from the Embassy Suites. Stop squinting and start seeing. Makeup isn't something you want to just smear on and hope for the best. You might come out looking like Lon Chaney. Call Lourdes James, independent beauty consultant, and get a free makeover to see how makeup should be done. 956-723-3019. Coffee, nectar of the gods. And at the Organic Man Coffee Trike, you'll find coffee made the right way, one delicious cup at a time. Stop on by 4501 McPherson, Suite number 9. And remember, life is too short to drink bad coffee. This is Arkanasa Radio you've been listening to. And welcome back to the show. In the 1920s, a young girl was walking along Niles Canyon Road, which runs from 680 to Sunol, California. It was February 26th, and she was on her way to the prom when a car came flying along. The driver either didn't see her or was unable to avoid hitting her, but either way, the girl was hit and thrown from the side of the road. The driver didn't bother to stop. Her body was found later, long after there was anything could have been done for her. As the years went by, people would see a young girl walking along Niles Canyon Road, dressed as if going to a party. Those who stopped would ask the girl where she was headed, to which she would give her address. As the vehicle is headed to the address, they would come to the Bay Bridge. As the car is about to cross the bridge, the girl would vanish. The bridge was where the body had been found. If the driver decides to continue to the address, the building is a long-abandoned wood frame house. It looks as if nobody has lived there since the early 30s. Today, Niles Canyon Road is named Highway 84. You'll see lots of people driving up and down the roadway looking for the girl, ghost hunters and the curious. She's been seen enough to draw a crowd, especially this time of year, but the best time to see her is on February 26th, the date of her death. Sometimes she looks like a normal, breathing person, but some people have said what they saw was the result of a very bad hit-and-run accident. The young girl is wearing what looks like a dress, but is now just rags, and the material is covered in blood. Her body shows many broken bones. One night, a man was driving down a dark country road when he noticed a young lady hitchhiker by the side of the road. She was pretty with long blonde hair, but she was wearing a blue dress. The man thought, well, she looks safe, why not pick her up and give her a ride? The young lady got in the passenger seat and then told the driver she was heading to a big white farmhouse about a mile down the road. She said that it was where she lives and asked to be dropped off. Once the driver got going, the young girl became silent. The hitchhiker didn't say anything else, and the driver figured she was either tired or just not really in the mood for conversation. He didn't push her for any more information. After a mile down the road, the man saw the big farmhouse. He turned to the young lady and said, "Is this the place?" Well, she was not there. The passenger seat was empty. He pulled over right in front of the farmhouse and looked in the back seat. Well, she wasn't there either. An old woman came out of the house and stood on the porch. She asked the driver what he was doing. The man explained that a young woman just disappeared from his car. The old lady asked for a description. Well, she was pretty with long blonde hair and a blue dress. The old woman said, "You just described my daughter. She died in a car accident on this road 10 years ago tonight." Once more, a young girl killed in a hit-and-run accident, only this one was wearing a blue dress instead of white. As far as ghosts go, the Phantom Hitchhiker is pretty much startling, but nothing to really be afraid of. There is a hitchhiking ghost on Route 44 in Massachusetts who seems a little more malevolent. The people who have seen this ghost describe him as being red-haired, middle-aged man wearing a flannel shirt. Should someone decide to stop and offer a ride, the hitchhiker doesn't say much and is pretty quiet as he gets in. Once the vehicle gets going, things sometimes take a turn for the worse. One story, a driver stopped and picked up the red-haired man. He got into the car and sat in the passenger seat without saying anything. When asked where he was headed, the red-headed guy just sat there. He pointed down the road. Well, some people don't speak much. Some people can't talk. The driver got going in the direction the hitchhiker had pointed. After a few miles of silence, the red-headed man began to laugh. Well, this would creep out just about anyone. Kind of sounds like a scene from a slasher movie. The driver wanted to know what was so funny, and figuring it was either time to stop and kick his passenger out, or maybe he had made a mistake by offering a ride. The driver said he looked at the red-headed guy in the passenger seat, and the man looked like he was crazy. The look in his eyes was almost demonic. He laughed a bit more, and then he disappeared like a bubble had popped. Most people driving along Route 44 see the red-headed man hitchhiking, and they decide it's best to just keep going. A Dead Man's Curve lies at the junction of Route 222 and 125 east of Cincinnati, Ohio. The road has a deadly reputation that has been tracked back to October of 1969. 5 teenagers were killed when the car they were riding in was hit by another speeding vehicle. Ever since that time, people have seen the ghost of a faceless hitchhiker hanging out near the intersection. Witnesses have described him as being a pitch-black silhouette of a man, with no discernible face or other features. One witness said, "I noticed a man's shape on the side of the road. It turned like it was hitchhiking with an arm sticking up. The thing wore light-colored pants, a blue shirt, had long hair, and a blank, flat surface where the face should have been. We looked back. There was no one there. I've also seen a black shadow figure walking in slow, labored, dragging walk by the side of that road." The U.S. is not the only country with phantom hitchhikers. In Switzerland, they have their own ghost of the roadway. Near the Belchen Tunnel, which connects Basel to Chiasso, people have seen an old woman dressed in white hitchhiking. People have stopped to offer her a ride. The old woman will get in the vehicle and ride through the tunnel, but she never makes it to the other side. The tunnel is about 1.5 miles long. She's been seen often since the 1980s, has become known as the Weissfrau, or Woman in White. 2 lawyers were traveling together heading to Basel. As they were about to enter the tunnel, they saw the old woman looking for a ride, and they stopped and picked her up. The old woman got in the back seat but didn't say anything. As they drove along, one of the lawyers asked the woman if she was okay, to which the wife's Frau said no, she was not. She said something bad is going to happen, and then she faded from the sight. The two lawyers were so shook up that they went to the police station and filed a report about what they had seen. The number of reports made by witnesses would only be a slight fraction of the number of folks who have actually seen the old woman. When I was writing about paranormal sightings at Fort McIntosh, I met a lot of people with sightings that didn't want me to put their stories in the book. They wanted to tell what they saw, but were afraid of ridicule or something. Even when I told them I would not use their names. So how many people have seen the Weiss Frau, but have never told anyone about their sighting? Merrill Road. Legend has it that sometime back in the early 1800s or late 1900s, a woman was walking along Merrill Road with her baby in her arms during a snowstorm. The woman had the baby out of wedlock and tried to abandon it on the side of the road. She later changed her mind and decided it was the wrong thing. So she went back to the little bridge where she had left the baby, only discovered it had vanished. As she stood there in the snow, she could hear the sound of crying. The woman began searching the area around the bridge, but couldn't find her abandoned child. After searching for hours, the woman became overcome with guilt and decided to kill herself. No one knows how she died. She either simply lay down in the snow and let nature take her, or she may have tried jumping from the bridge. Neither of the bodies was ever found. Many people have said they've seen the ghostly woman in a torn, bloody nightgown roaming the roadway as if looking for her missing child. What used to be just a dirt road has been paved. The woman searching for her baby sometimes looks like a green light moving through the woods, and sometimes comes onto the road and chases cars from the property. Either the ghost is trying to drive people away, or just maybe she's trying to get the witness to help look for her child. The story goes if you park on the old bridge at midnight and honk your horn 3 times, as she would appear in front of your car, believing that maybe you have her baby. Some reports claim the green light has entered their car as they sat there watching. Engines have failed, leaving people stranded sitting in the dark. A few people have had a desperate-looking woman banging on their window, screaming, "Where's my baby?" She vanishes soon after. People visiting the location have reported hearing a baby crying outside their car. Highway 93 runs through a desolate desert northwest from Wickenburg up to Highway 40 near Kingsman, just east of the Nevada border. The locals call Highway 93 Blood Alley because of the many tragic deaths that have occurred along its lengths. It is a winding, hilly road filled with blind curves and almost no shoulder on the side if you have to avoid something. Due to the hills, there are dead zones where cell phones don't work, and there's no radio reception except for static. Oftentimes you can travel the entire length of the road without ever seeing another vehicle. The road has a history of tragedy. The entire length of this highway is dotted with small white crosses. These show the locations of fatal accidents. Some places have a cluster of crosses where several people died in one accident, or there have been several accidents all in the same spot. With all the tragedy along this road, it's no surprise that it's haunted by many phantoms. A family encountered the ghost of the highwayman as they were traveling south towards Wickenburg late one night. The family was traveling together in two vehicles. As they were driving along the road, they all saw what looked like a person carrying a lantern standing on the side of the road. As they drew close, they could see a man walking along the side. The figure stood well over 6 feet tall. He was dressed kind of like a cowboy. He had on a cowboy hat, a black duster, jeans, and cowboy boots. The lantern was held high up over his head, so his face was cast in shadow. The two carfuls of people said they saw what looked like an old-style motorcycle parked on the side of the road near the man. The motorcycle was not close enough so that the lantern would show any details. As the two cars approached, the man stepped back off the side of the road and the light went out. Not wanting to accidentally hit the man, the drivers both slowed down. Passing the spot, they could see there was no one there and there was no motorcycle parked. A stretch of motorway in England is said to be haunted or otherwise cursed, with one psychic going as far as to call the area Cheshire's Bermuda Triangle. Mike Brooker, who bills himself as an international psychic medium, believes that all the unexplained phenomena along M6 motorway between junctions 16 and 19 of the M6 in Cheshire County, which is northwest England, have a supernatural explanation owing to the area's ancient history. According to official statistics, this particular stretch of motorway has an anomalously high accident rate, making it one of the most dangerous stretches of road in England. The M6 has been named the deadliest motorway in Britain after taking the lives of over a dozen drivers each year during the past 10 years. Brooker believes this particular area near Cheshire is curiously accident-prone for a reason. For decades now, the amount of accidents on M6 motorway between junction 17 and 19 is completely unprecedented, and statistically, this is without a doubt one of the worst accident black spots on any motorway network in the UK, Brooker said. Perhaps for those reasons, the county is undertaking a $332 million renovation of the motorway, including the addition of 70 closed-circuit cameras and 258 new electronic signs to help warn motorists of traffic or accidents. From a psychic standpoint, the renovations will not be enough. Brooker believes the motorway will remain unusually dangerous for one simple fact. The area is haunted, likely due to the area's ancient Roman and Saxon heritage. Natural explanations such as blown tires, mechanical faults, and distracted drivers don't cover the whole breadth of this. This is something inexplicable, Brooker said. He is learning towards the theory that it can be connected to Saxon involvement. There are reports of a Roman burial ground and that there was an historic clash between Scottish and English armies. There are so many variables and possibilities. Kelly Road, also known as SR 4043, runs north to south in Ohioville, just east of the Ohio border. The road has a nickname, the Mystery Mile. It's a 1-mile section of the road that appears to exhibit weird phenomena and some paranormal effects. Upon entering this area, normally peaceful animals and pets suddenly become vicious and violent with no apparent cause. Vehicles driving by with pets in them will have to restrain the animals. One farmer said that a few times he's woken in the middle of the night by his animals. The farm animals were all going crazy, making all kinds of racket. Then the noises just suddenly stopped. The farmer said it was quiet for the rest of the night, but in the morning he found the yard was a mess. The bales of hay were scattered about the place. Normally, domesticated animals have been known to chase other animals and even people. A man was out for a walk one evening when a flock of chickens came from the farmyard and began to chase him. Not too scary, but still very odd behavior. The man hurried down the road, and as soon as he had passed the mile marker, the chickens stopped and turned around headed back home. A few weeks later, the same thing happened, only this time it was a bunch of goats. Along the heavily wooded section of the road, wispy white apparitions have been seen, and people report hearing unexplainable noises coming from the woods. There's one story of a ghost of an angry boy in the Mystery Mile, told by Arissa, who lived there and always felt afraid while in her home. She said, "One night I decided I was sick of being scared. I forced myself to get up and go to the window and look out at our backyard. There was someone there, and even though it was pitch black outside, I could see him as if it were daylight. His face was pale white, and his eyes looked very sad. I don't understand how, but even though he was far away, I knew what his face looked like. But the incredible thing was the clothing he had on, which looked like it was from decades before." Residents of Electra, Texas are convinced that Moeller Road is haunted, especially near the Sheila Bridge. It has been said that during the 1800s a woman was burned alive on the bridge for practicing witchcraft. Those brave enough to stand near the bridge at night often hear a woman citing spells from the surrounding foliage. Many people have reported feeling a burning sensation all over their body, as if they were standing too close to a fire. Some have even said that they have found a burn in the shape of a hand on their body the following day. Texas Farm Roads 12, 165, 2325, and 32, along with U.S. Highway 281, form a scenic loop that connects Wimberley to Blanco. This loop cuts through a scenic portion of the Texas Hill Country that looks like something straight out of a Wild West movie. The area is called the Devil's Backbone. People come from all over Texas to see the sweeping vistas. The area also draws visitors from far away, even from beyond the grave. The history of the Devil's Backbone, like many areas of the West, has seen its share of violence for Indians and settlers alike. In more recent years, the twisty stretch of highway has been the scene of numerous fatal car accidents. Many ghosts seem to have lingered in the area. One account of ghostly encounters comes from the foreman of an area ranch. He awoke to the sound of horses running by his cabin. When he went outside, he saw at least 20 men on horseback riding near the cabin. They appeared to be ghosts of Confederate soldiers. The sound of their horses' hooves was loud enough that it could be felt through the floor of the cabin. There are also tales of a ghost of a Native American named Drago who has been seen herding cattle along the backbone. The ranchers also tell of a widow and child of a miner who was killed, and they've been seen wandering the area, supposedly seeking a proper Christian burial for their husband and father. Along the aptly named Purgatory Road, an apparition is said to materialize on the hood of cars as they drive along. Ghost hunters frequent this area and have seen shadow people there and have recorded EVPs. One of the strangest experiences was that of John Villarreal. One afternoon, John was hiking along with two friends in the area known as the Haunted Valley. While walking, he saw what looked like a wolf. When they got back to their truck, John's friends noticed that he was very cold. When they got back to the ranch, they were certain that John had become possessed. He spoke in a deep voice and talked about Indian massacres. Out of nowhere, a gust of wind came through the ranch's window, and it pushed the back door open. At that point, John seemed to return to his normal self. To this day, nobody can explain why all of this strange phenomena is occurring at the Limestone Ridge in Texas Hill Country. Then there's Old Foamy, which is the name of a goat man or satyr-like monster that haunts the area of Claiborne, Texas. The creature gets its name from the local stream that runs by the road. Old Foamy stands about 7 feet tall and is half man and half goat. According to legend, if somebody parks their car on Old Foamy Road near the stream, turns out their lights and honks the horn 3 times, the beast will appear. You notice how many stories involve doing something 3 times in a row? For example, Beetlejuice. No, I'm not going to say it a 3rd time. Then there's the Bloody Mary story. Folks say that this has to do with the Trinity. It's kind of a reversal of God, Jesus, and the Holy Ghost, only it's the demonic twist to the Trinity. This is also why a lot of times when people are scratched during ghost hunts, there will be 3 scratches running across their body. It's something to do with those 3 combined. The area around the Old Foamy Stream has an eerie reputation as many bodies have been found there over the years. Most of the victims appear to have been hanged, though in some cases the victims were murdered. One man murdered his family and he scattered their body parts there back in the 1960s. The area is also reported to be the location where satanic rituals are being performed. This sounds a lot like the area of Laredo College near the South Wall. There used to be tennis courts and a swimming pool there. The Satanists were said to perform rituals in the area, and a few people have seen people in long, dark robes walking around the area at night. Old Foamy is said to have incredible strength and is reported to either throw dead animals at cars or jump on top of the car roof and attempt to bust through and get to the people inside. The creature may have the supernatural ability to affect cars by either preventing them from starting or pushing them a distance down the road. I included this next story because I lived in the area for years. NASA Road 1 which runs from Seabrook, Texas to Webster, is said to be the scene of a shadowy group of figures that have been seen by people driving along at night. What people are seeing appears to be 3 children hitchhiking in the area. The story goes that an elderly couple saw 2 boys and a girl who ran in front of their vehicle. The man stopped the car and asked what was wrong. The children said there had been an accident nearby and they asked the couple for help. The wife told the children to get in the back seat and to show them where the accident had been. Once in the vehicle, the children started fighting amongst themselves. When the woman tried to stop them, the girl bit her. It appeared the girl had long fangs. The children then attacked the couple, biting and beating them. The driver swerved into a ditch, hit his head, and lost consciousness. When he came to, his wife was missing. She's never been found. I wasn't going to include this story because the sighting says it was in League City, Texas on NASA Road 1. Well, NASA Road 1 doesn't run through League City. But then NASA Road 1 does run into 528, which does run through a small portion of League City. I tried to find out more on this story, but this was all I could find. If you live in the area and know anything more on this story, please let me know. Send me a message at strangethings@arkanasa.com and I'll put it on the show. Sometimes we're not as safe in our vehicles as we would wish. It's that time of year again, and people go looking for scary places so they can see the local ghosts. Feel free to go looking, but take care you don't accidentally become one of our local legends. Until next Saturday, this is Chris James for Strange Things.
Are you coming to the tree where they strung up a man, they say murder 3? Strange things that happen here, how stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree?